The announcement for the upcoming Genshin Impact version 3.1 update is happening later this week and I'm so excited! But one of the many questions some people have on your minds right now is, will we see Scaramouche as part of the next chapter of Sumeru's Archon quest? Ever since this guy disappeared after grabbing the Electro-Gnosis from the previous Archon quest in Inazuma, fans have been speculating with all sorts of questions. Will Scaramouche be able to unlock the power of the Electro-Gnosis for himself? Where's he gonna show up next? Is he gonna be making a grab for the Dendro-Noxus too? And what else will happen with his character moving forward? Is he going to join the Traveler or die? Let's break down some of these thoughts, theories, and my expectations for whether or not we're gonna be seeing good old number 6 of the Fatui Harbingers, and how he may or may not relate to the final chapter of Sumeru's Archon quest that will be announced later this week. Firstly, the big reason why I'm making this video in the first place. I strongly suspect we will see Scaramouche in version 3.1. I'm at least hoping he'll be there. There's tons of good reasons for him to be skulking around in Sumeru, so let's go over some of them together. The first reason is that we don't have much in the way of confirmation about Scaramouche's ability to use the Electro-Gnosis for himself. And given the fact that Sumeru is the hub for knowledge and research, Scaramouche might be there to learn more about the Noxus and how to unlock its secrets and harness its power. We do know that he was a puppet designed by Ai as part of her many experiments to attain eternity. So he was at least designed with some amount of intention to have him house the Noxus. But we also know from his backstory that he could not handle the power of the Noxus when Ai tried to use it with him. He was deemed by Ai to be too gentle or fragile to cope with the Noxus, and so Ai sealed up his powers and set him free to live his life as he chooses, feeling he at least deserved some way of pursuing happiness on his own terms, I guess. Anyways, Scaramouche eventually meets the Fatui, and we know that they were able to unlock his previously sealed powers, on top of probably giving him additional powers we don't really know about yet. And so, based on his background, we know that Scaramouche has been imbued with the power of the Electro-Gnosis at least once, but was previously unable to handle it for some reason. Now, it doesn't mean that Scaramouche in present time wouldn't be able to handle it. As I mentioned, the Fatui were able to unlock his previously sealed powers, and might have even given him some new unknown abilities. But right now, we don't have a reason to believe that any of these additions would have allowed him to use the Electro-Gnosis. And so, it's perfectly reasonable to think that Scaramouche is somewhere in Sumeru trying to find information about the Noxus so he can learn to wield the power of a god. And my personal belief is that one of the tools Scaramouche will need to achieve what he's looking for lies in the divine knowledge capsules we've seen from the initial sections of the Archon quest. We know that the divine knowledge capsules contain the knowledge of the gods, but also houses some kind of corruption that drives people mad when they try to use it. We saw this happen with the captain of the Ain Alk-Akma in the Archon quest that was released in version 3.0. But because Scaramouche isn't any normal person, I mean, he's literally not human, I do wonder if he'll be able to uniquely tap into the information that's contained within the divine knowledge capsule via the Akasha terminal without experiencing these ill effects. That's just an idea. In a recent video by Chill with Esther, covering her expectations for Scaramouche in Sumeru, she mentions that he might even be able to steal the Dendro-Noxus, and if he figures out a way to use both Noxus, he might be a boss we have to fight at the closing of the Archon quest. Imagine that! Scaramouche with the Electro-Gnosis, the Dendro-Noxus, and his unknown delusion? That's a scary thought. If his delusion is the hydro element, that could lead to some pretty whack reactions. But back to my personal thoughts. I think Scaramouche might also use his presence in Sumeru as an opportunity to mess with the Fatui. We already know that the Fatui are up to their typical meddling within Sumeru, and we also know that the Dottore has one of his clones or segments that is in Sumeru doing something or other related to what he calls an experiment in blasphemy. And specifically, this segment of the Dottore is the one that is in the so-called prime of his life, indicating that it might be his favorite or most powerful in some way. Perhaps Scaramouche might take this opportunity to attack or even dispatch one of the Dottore's most valuable segments that is in Sumeru. It just seems like something Scaramouche would do, you know? If this conflict happens, I honestly don't know who would come up on top, and whether it's Dottore or us, the Traveler fighting Scaramouche, or even both. I don't know if this would lead to Scaramouche's demise. I personally don't think Scaramouche would die, because my feeling is that Hoyo still wants to do a lot more with his character. Scaramouche's story is a very interesting and unique one about discovering oneself and finding their purpose, struggling to fit in as someone who is wildly different, and resisting society's expectations on what is and isn't acceptable. Some might argue that La Signora was an interesting character as well, and she had a sudden death, implying that Scaramouche might be killed off too. But I feel that Signora's story as a character had a relatively logical conclusion to it. Her story is one of love, then loss, which eventually led to anger. Finally, her resentment and arrogance led to her downfall in a humiliating and unexpected defeat that shocked all of us players, but acted as a striking lesson about how pride and anger can be one's greatest folly. Her story is finished, dramatically ending with her death. Scaramouche's death, in contrast, will likely serve comparatively little purpose in advancing the story Hoyo is trying to tell. But me saying all of this is just speculating at the end of the day. To wrap up, I have no idea if Scaramouche will be in Sumeru, but at this point, we only have a few days left to wait before we'll find out. What do you think? Will Scaramouche grace us with his presence in Sumeru 3.1 update? I'm super excited about version 3.1. I'll definitely be looking into talking more about what we can learn about Sumeru on this channel. So if you like what I do, subscribe to stay notified, and I'll see you next time. Stay spicy and Godspeed, travelers.